Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Washington, D.C. for a high-stakes meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump aimed at ending the war with Russia. But the path to peace is fraught with many challenges, and to better understand the nuances of the situation at hand, we are now being joined by Mr. Mikael Waltersson. He is a military and political analyst and a former officer of the Swedish Army. Thank you so much, Mr. Waltersson, for joining us on WION The World this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So let me start off by saying that now that President Zelensky is in Washington, joined by key EU leaders meeting Donald Trump just days after his Alaska summit with Vladimir Putin. Now, they're hoping to present a united front and ensure Ukraine's interests aren't sacrificed for a quick peace deal. Now, how do you see this meeting shaping up?
Well, I'm not quite sure if it's a good thing having many EU leaders with Zelensky, because it might give an impression that they are ganging up on Trump. And it's also a sign that they don't really trust that Zelensky by himself can make a deal with Trump. So it's both a bit of distrust of Zelensky and an attempt to strengthen his position.
Right, sir, but for so many heads of state to cross the Atlantic at such a short notice for what's essentially a wartime crisis meeting, it's almost unprecedented in modern diplomacy. And the NATO leaders also appear eager to avoid a repeat of Zelensky's February trip to the Oval Office. Now, having said that, does this urgency signal genuine panic in the European capitals after what happened in Alaska?
Yes, because in many ways, Trump accepted Putin's proposals, and that is that there won't be a ceasefire. You are going to go directly to a peace, and also that Ukraine would have to leave the western Donetsk area, about 6,000 square kilometers, with a number of well-fortified cities. And that's a totally no-go zone for Zelensky and the Europeans. But now Trump has agreed with Putin about that. So they must change him back to another, the former position he had. And then he had to, in that case, he breaks his agreement with Putin. So it's a very tricky situation for the European and Ukrainian leaders.
It is a tricky situation indeed, Mr. Waltersson, now that President Trump has put the onus on Ukraine to make sure that the peace deal goes ahead. And President Trump has now also said that Zelensky could end the war almost immediately, but has ruled out any discussion on Crimea or NATO membership. Meanwhile, Putin's conditions are very clear, and on the top of the list is Ukraine ceding the eastern Donbas region. And now President Trump seems to be leaning towards that as well. Now, what would giving up Donbas actually mean for Ukraine?
Well, in reality, Russia has taken most of it, so it's just 6,000 square kilometers left. But those cities are very, very well fortified and have been fought about for more than 10 years. So if Ukraine gave them up without a fight, Russia would... they don't have to fight about it for maybe 1 year. And hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers would don't be killed or wounded, and the cities would be captured intact, not as ruins. And the worst thing for Ukraine is also, if we don't think on the psychological effect, is that their entire defense line will then be in Russian hands. So it's just an empty step on the other side. And if the warfare continued, it would be very easy for Russia to advance towards the Dnieper River.
Absolutely, Mr. Waltersson. Now, Russia clearly has the upper hand, but now that we are more than 3.5 years into this war and every so-called peace effort seems to have hit a dead end. Now, from where you stand, what does a realistic roadmap to lasting peace even look like, given the current trajectory that we're on?
Well, unfortunately, I don't... I think it's a slim chance now that there will be a peace agreement. The main outcome is probably that Ukraine and Europe says no, and the US becomes angry at them and maybe abandon Ukraine entirely. I believe that it's not nice to say it, but Ukraine must lose more until they realize that they have to agree to a much more compromise agreement than they are thinking about now, because they have often talked about a maximalist goal, returning the territories in the east. Okay, they realize that they can't do that. So now they are talking about freezing the front lines, but not, of course, accepting the euro, the Russian annexations. But Russia has now said to Trump, we are agreeing on a compromise. They have earlier said that they wanted the Western Donetsk region and the Western Zaporizhia and Western Kherson. For the moment, they don't claim Western Kherson and Zaporizhia. They claim it in the long term, but they don't need it now. So Trump believes that, okay, now Russia has made a big step towards a compromise, and now it's Ukraine's turn to do it. But it's very hard because they have been fighting for many years for these areas, and to just give them up, it's not possible. And Russia will not accept a freezing of the front line, especially since Russia is advancing at a higher speed than they have done for a long time.
Absolutely. A compromise is needed, but from what we know that the compromise and the expectations of it are extremely asymmetrical right now. But of course, we'll have to wait and see how this meeting goes to get more details. But thank you so much for joining us on WION, Mr. Michael Watterson, and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.